Now that everything is settled, it's better if the nuisance leaves, right? LOL. You're right, Mom. I was thinking the same. So that's settled, Samantha. I'm divorcing you. Please leave right now. Despite being married and forced to live with my in-laws, all the while helping with loan repayments, I was suddenly deemed a nuisance and faced with a divorce. My husband and mother-in-law decided everything on their own and deliberately completed most of the procedures before informing me. No matter how much I resisted, they wouldn't listen. I'm sorry, but I plan to drag my husband and his entire family down to hell. LOL. My name is Samantha, and I'm 34 years old. I've been married to Michael for 6 years now. We don't have children yet, and honestly, our marital relationship is completely dry. I thought marrying you would bring more excitement to my life, but this was unexpected. LOL. Well, I plan to use you as a housekeeper here for life. Just don't get too cocky. 6 months after our marriage, he started calling me you, and now I couldn't even remember him ever using my name. Why did I marry such a cold man? Sometimes I reflect on the past, but I can't remember why I married him. However, my husband used to be much kinder, compassionate, and reliable. Originally from a poor family, I always thought that I would avoid financial troubles once I got married. So a man who would dabble even slightly in gambling was out of the question for me. Even after graduating from high school and starting work, I couldn't shake off my old frugal habits, so I tend to overthink even when buying something new. From my husband's perspective, my actions seemed prudent and thrifty, which might have been why he decided to marry me. How much savings do you have, Samantha? You're not interested in luxury or fashion, right? LOL. I think we might be similar. Our financial values might even align. He often said such things. For me, who always dreaded a life of poverty, having aligned financial values was a blessing. But now that I think about it, it was rude to ask about savings, let alone to casually say that a woman isn't interested in fashion. It's rude to ask about someone's savings. Besides, it's offensive to assume that a woman isn't interested in fashion. Back then, I still hoped that my insensitive husband would change. Less than a year into dating, we decided to get married. The discussion about the unexpected cohabitation came up right after we were newly married. I have something I want to discuss with you today, Samantha. Don't be shocked, LOL. He said this with a smirk. That made me suspect that it was bad news, and it indeed turned out to be an absolutely terrible idea. After discussing with my mom, we've actually decided to live together at her house. You know, she can't manage without me. And since the lease on this apartment ends next month, we're moving. He told me this without considering my opinion, as if he and his mother had already decided everything. Wait a minute. Isn't that too sudden? Your parents' house is quite far from my workplace. Honestly, I was against living with them, so I objected, but it was already decided, and he insisted strongly. Every time he opened his mouth, it was Mom, Mom. Honestly, that alone was off-putting, but what shocked me more was, the house is a bit small for 4 people, and it's inconvenient. Plus, my sister comes to visit often, so we're taking out a loan to renovate it. LOL. He took out a loan in his own name without consulting me at all. You've got to be kidding. Are you sane? It's absolutely impossible. Living with the in-laws and the frequent presence of his sister. After a series of unbelievable stories, another shocking statement came from my husband. So that's why you need to quit your current job. As a wife, you'll have to take care of not only me, but my parents as well from now on. Well, if you still want to work, I'll allow you to do remote work. LOL. Everything was too fast and one-sided for me to fully grasp and understand the situation. Why are you doing all these selfish things? You're not considering my feelings at all. Huh? Why should I consider your feelings? LOL. I'm the head of the family, so the decision-making is in my hands, right? I had plans for work that would take years to accomplish, but here I was, expected to throw them all away and become a housewife. I somewhat understood what he meant, to think this would happen within just a year of marriage. Of course, I said, this isn't what we agreed on, and completely refused the idea. However, no matter how long we talked, the discussion went nowhere. Once my husband realized my resolve was firm, he said, "If you keep being selfish, the family will suffer. It's your fault, so what are you going to do about it? And then, unbelievably, if that happens, we'll have to ask your parents for help." I couldn't believe that he'd even think of involving my parents in this. I've completely run out of patience with my husband's audacity, but my parents were getting old. I felt like our family was being held hostage, but I didn't want to worry my parents, so I had no choice but to agree. "If only you wouldn't just listen to your mother but to me as well." Ah, LOL. No problem, no problem. Listening to you is the least I can do since I'm on your side, LOL. I was serious, but my husband took my words lightly. And as expected, the battle between me and my mother-in-law began as soon as we started living together. The remodeled house was surprisingly spacious and provided a private environment, but I became incredibly busy. Not long after we moved, I was still working, but my mother-in-law paid no attention to my work situation and said, "Hey housemaid, when will you quit your job and focus on housework? If this continues, the house will remain a mess, LOL." Every day, I returned home exhausted only to be unilaterally scolded. My husband had initially promised to support me when it came to issues with my mother-in-law, but he never defended me in the end, and it became normal for him and my mother-in-law to blame me. You know how old my mother is, right? It's crazy to think you can dump all the housework on her. I only asked that we continue to handle our matters ourselves, yet somehow I was made out to be the bad guy. My father-in-law was technically present in the house, but he was so inconspicuous that he seemed to be avoiding trouble by running around the house. Mr. Baker, may I ask you something? No, no, no. Please stop. Don't talk to me. If she sees us chatting, I can't imagine what she'll say. I just wanted to know where the breaker was. It was over if we couldn't even have such conversations, right? 2 weeks after we started living together, my husband and mother-in-law began threatening, "When are you going to quit your job? If you don't make up your mind soon, I might contact your company." I was determined not to lose my job, the only place where I felt I belonged and had a purpose. This dragged on, and then my husband said, "Your mom is a kind person. If you really don't want to quit your job, maybe she can do something about it." He suggested that instead of me, my mother could come and take care of the house. Seems like he didn't want to blame anyone but me. It's not unthinkable that he would call my mother to threaten her and cause trouble. Resignation was the only option left for me. Even after I hurriedly handed over my work to a junior and resigned because my mother-in-law and husband kept insisting, I received no gratitude for quitting. Anyway, that was the start of my days being exploited. You quit your job, so your income has decreased, right? Don't just rely on me. Find a way to earn money through remote work or something. Next, he said to earn money from home. He was essentially telling me, don't slack off, handle everything. Previously, I would have argued back, but now the desire not to see his face anymore grew stronger. If he was foreseeing this and speaking sarcastically, then he was quite a strategist. Our conversations almost ceased, and I became a housemaid for his family. My sister-in-law often came to me and said, "Hey, you're not leaving all the mortgage payments to my brother Michael, are you? Since we're letting you live here, you should contribute to the repayment too. It must have cost at least $300,000 for the renovation." What? Letting me live here? We're a married couple. It's natural for us to live together. They decided to cohabit on their own and even went ahead with the renovations and then told me to quit my job. And now to help with the mortgage payments too? Anyone would say this is absurd. I unintentionally raised my voice. But my sister-in-law immediately changed the topic. What a foul-mouthed wife. Well, you were raised poorly, so it's natural you don't know what a normal family is like. I won't blame you. Communication was completely ineffective. Why did I have to endure this? That's exactly how I felt. Well, if it were a family where common sense prevailed, this conversation wouldn't even be happening. I definitely married a dangerous man. That night, my husband said to me, "You heard from my sister today, right? About the mortgage repayment for this house, LOL. We've decided to split it among everyone. Or rather, it's only natural for you, my wife, to pay. That's what I think, LOL." Seeing my husband smirk while he said this, I was speechless. Until now, I resisted letting things go his way. But this moment was when I truly realized everything. I can't live with this man any longer. If I stayed, not only would I ruin myself, but also his family. However, I couldn't just bring up divorce immediately. I thought it would worry my parents. My mother's health had recently deteriorated, and she was visiting the hospital, while my father, who was caring for her, was also accumulating fatigue. Bringing up divorce might shock them too much. I couldn't be so selfish. So, I thought I'd resolve the current issues first. As suggested by my husband and his family, I started to work from home and helped with the mortgage repayments. Along the way, I asked my husband to change the loan procedures and cooperated to pay it off quickly, so maybe because I was diligently repaying the loan, he was in a good mood, saying, "It's good that you're finally acting like a proper wife. If you kept acting high and mighty. I was even considering divorcing you, LOL. I was clearly paying more, and the situation remained unfair, but I committed to enduring it until everything was settled. Before I knew it, I was 34 years old, and 6 years had passed since our marriage. Thinking about why I got married made me sad, so I tried to stay positive and maintained a positive outlook. Sometimes, when I checked social media, I saw old friends who had 2 children and were posting about traveling with their families, which made me envious. I also wanted a happy marriage and children. Now, those wishes seemed unreachable. But over the past few years, my mother-in-law had less to complain regarding my behavior. Maybe our maid has finally become a decent human being. It was tough to educate an unreasonable daughter-in-law, but it turned out okay. She would say while laughing with my sister-in-law, "Ultimately, remote work seemed to suit me well, and although I haven't told my husband, I've earned a substantial amount over these years. And to my surprise, I managed to pay off the $300,000 in just a few years. Normally, it would take 35 years. We would have been over 60 years old, but I wanted him to appreciate how quickly I managed to repay it. That night, I said to my husband, "You know, it's about the mortgage. I just paid it off the other day. And today, I have something important to discuss." I had prepared divorce papers and was making preparations to leave the house for this very day. But the moment I mentioned that the mortgage was paid off, my mother-in-law came over and exclaimed, "What? Paid off? It's already paid off." My mother-in-law, who heard everything, interrupted our conversation. "Yes, that's right. And today I wanted to have an important discussion with Michael." Just as I was about to bring up the topic of divorce, my mother-in-law approached me with a smile wider than I had ever seen before and said this: "Now that everything is settled, it's better if the nuisance leaves, right? LOL. From now on we can finally live without the nuisance, just our family, right? LOL. You're right, Mom." I was thinking the same. "So that's settled. Samantha, I'm divorcing you. Please leave right now." Before I could say it, my husband brought up divorce. Despite being forced to live with my in-laws and help with mortgage repayments after getting married, I was suddenly deemed a nuisance and faced with a divorce proposal. To be told first, rather than saying it myself, felt off. And then, in front of me, my mother-in-law started calling a locksmith. "Could you please change the locks? We need it done urgently." After enduring so much, it was at this moment I swore to bring my husband and his entire family down to hell. Soon after, the locksmith arrived at our home and changed the locks. My mother-in-law and husband were smirking at me and said, "That's the way it is. You need to leave this house today. LOL. We're going to live happily in this house as a family from now on." That's right. Samantha, thank you for your hard work over the last 6 years. Oh, and by the way, no alimony or division of assets, please. Michael and I haven't done anything to warrant trouble. LOL. They said that. No division of assets. Well, that's fine. Kind of lucky. LOL. With that in mind, I handed over the divorce papers I had prepared. I quickly drafted a document stating no alimony or division of assets and had them sign it. My husband happily signed the divorce papers. My mother-in-law watched him sign, and from the corner of the room, my father-in-law quietly observed everything. Thinking that I could finally say goodbye to these people was an exhilarating feeling. I quickly packed my belongings and left the house with the signed documents. I could hear cheers and clapping from inside the house, but honestly, those words should be coming from me. Because from now on, the tables were going to turn. LOL. After leaving the house, I immediately went to submit the divorce papers and then straight to the real estate agent. I had already visited the real estate agent several times before and started preparations on that end. Mr. Carter, the agent, had an aura of a true professional, understood everything I was planning to do, and took immediate action. A week after I left the house, sure enough, I received a call. My ex-husband and his family, looking frantic, called me. "Hey Samantha, what's going on? We got a notice to vacate this house within a week. Don't tell me this is your doing? This is terrible. How could you do this?" Mr. Carter, who I knew worked efficiently, managed to finish the procedures quickly and even found a buyer for that house, which was incredible. About that, I asked the real estate agent. After all, I was the one who finished paying off the mortgage. Did you forget? I changed the ownership to my name halfway through. LOL. What? As expected, my ex-husband remembered nothing. It seemed he only had the mortgage repayment on his mind, and any other procedural changes were made according to my instructions without him checking the details. Well, even so, Michael was the one who didn't check. It was not my responsibility. Anyway, I'm the one who paid off the $300,000. Besides, I never received any living expenses from you, right? Even your father and mother, whenever they received their pensions, would say, "We'll use our money ourselves," and didn't give a penny. I mean, there's a good reason for that. In the end, I was the one who had been supporting this family for 6 years. I was told to quit my job to earn from home, and despite doing as told, I was constantly berated to the point of feeling sick to my stomach. And on top of that, I was made to help with the mortgage repayments. After all I had done for this family without a single thank you, having the locks changed and being thrown out, I couldn't just stay silent. Wait a minute. Let's talk again. If we talk, you'll understand. After all, we were a family. And we have nowhere to go if we leave this house. You know that, right? Michael said this with a voice close to tears, but there was no way I would be fooled by such weak words now. LOL. A place to go? There is one. LOL. Your sister Mary's house. Why don't the 4 of you live at her house? When I said this spitefully, my mother-in-law took the phone and said, "How can you be so mean? There's no way we can live at her house. She's going through a tough divorce herself. You can't possibly cause trouble for my daughter." So I said, "Oh, so even if it's your beloved son's wife, she's still a stranger, and it's okay to cause her trouble. Well, that makes sense. Now I understand your thinking even better, and I dislike you even more. LOL. There's no way I'll help. You." I could hear unbearable insults from the other end of the phone, but I felt relieved to have said what I wanted to say. "Well, anyways, please leave quickly. It must be tough without any money. I think you're a close-knit family, so hold hands and work hard together. LOL. Bye." Wait a minute. You. Enough with the jokes. My mother-in-law was shouting, but I just hung up the phone. Even at such a crucial moment, my ex-husband hid behind his mother and didn't utter a word. This was his true nature, talking big, but when it mattered, he made excuses and ran away. Well, it just showed I had no judgment when it came to men. 3 days later, Mr. Carter went out of his way to let me know what happened to them afterward. He might have sensed my apprehension that they might do something crazy out of spite. Just before the house was put up for sale, my ex-husband and his family moved out at night. Desperate, they begged relatives, but being disliked by most, they eventually ended up in the countryside at my father-in-law's parental home. Even there, they were not welcomed, and moreover, there was bad communication between my mother and father-in-law's family. Well, with such people, it was to be expected. They were given only one room and, being freeloaders, were made to work from morning till evening in my father-in-law's family's farm. Although my mother-in-law was elderly, I didn't feel sorry for her. The treatment they gave me has simply come back to haunt them. They will likely continue to live in poverty, and more importantly, they'll never live in a nice single-family home again. They should look back and regret that their past life was actually quite comfortable. Anyway, I'm relieved there was no division of assets. After all, someone who can pay off $30 million in 10 years is capable enough to come up with all sorts of bad ideas. Lucky for me that my husband was not smart. LOL. As for me, I was fortunate to quickly find a job. It seemed that news of my divorce and leaving the house had reached my previous workplace somehow, and they reached out to me. "Without you, Samantha, the workplace just doesn't function," my colleague said, and it sounded genuine. Being able to restart a career I had once given up on really felt like luck was on my side. And in the slightly changed team at work, there was a man who seemed particularly concerned about me. Though I thought I was done with such things for a while, being around him made me think that maybe it wasn't such a bad idea. Now I'm living a fulfilled life, both at work and in my personal life.
This room is for me, so the ugly maid of a wife can use the attic. Why do I have to be told something like this? After all, I'm the one who built this house. The mother-in-law who barged into the new house I built under my name forced us to live together. No, that's a bit, huh? You dare talk back to me? Unbelievable. Normally, you should just give it up without saying anything to me, your mother-in-law. No way. Normally, you wouldn't just give it up, especially not to you, who has been tormenting me as a daughter-in-law. Then, my mother-in-law and I continued to argue for a while, but it gradually became troublesome. If you're willing to live in the attic, just hurry up and say you'll give me this house. Stupid, ugly wife. At that remark from my mother-in-law, my patience finally snapped. Enough with the ugly and maid stuff. If you're going to say that much, I understand. Huh. Alright then. Mother-in-law, please live in this house. I'll leave. If you had just obeyed what I said from the start, it would have been better. Well, I'll be living in this house now. Hearing that I was leaving, my mother-in-law was overjoyed. She can be happy for now. But let me say this. I have never once said I'll give up the house. The ownership of this house is mine after all. I will never forgive you, who has tormented me so much as a daughter-in-law. When I left the house, I swore in my heart to take revenge on my mother-in-law. My name is Faith. I married Peter, who is the same age as me and works at a car dealership, 4 years ago. Faith, do you ever think about wanting a home of your own? Well, yeah, but we haven't saved up enough money yet, right? I wish I could earn more. I work as a designer at a major advertising agency, but we still couldn't afford to buy a house. While living in a cheap apartment, we spent our days dreaming of building our own home someday. Our relationship is good and we rarely fight. However, Peter's mother, my mother-in-law, and I have the worst relationship. You're Peter's spouse. You seem to have an unlucky face. I wonder what Peter saw in someone like you? Ha ha ha. I still remember what my mother-in-law said to me when I first met her during our marriage introduction. All I could do at that time was give her a smile and just endure as time passed. Listen, I've never been short of money. My husband has passed away, but he was a director at a company. We got a substantial amount of severance pay. Envious, aren't you? Hey, stop it. It's embarrassing. You don't need to brag like that. It's the truth, so it's fine. I came from a wealthy family, and we even had a maid. Oh, since we're on the topic, how about you work as a maid at my house? No, thank you. I'd rather not. This is the first time I've met someone who brags so much about being wealthy. From the way my mother-in-law talks, she must have been quite rich. But Peter doesn't usually talk about such things. He probably grew up seeing his mother and decided he didn't want to be like that. Hey, what's up? You're zoning out. Oh, sorry. I just got lost in thought about the past. While talking about money with my husband, I inadvertently remembered meeting my mother-in-law. I should stop thinking about my mother-in-law too much. Our apartment and my in-law's house are about a 30-minute walk apart, but I guess my husband keeps things under control. My mother-in-law doesn't visit us very often. We meet a few times a year, and that's completely fine. I thought as long as we keep a reasonable distance, there should be no harm to me. However, due to a certain incident, I ended up being terribly mistreated by my mother-in-law. It happened 6 months later. When I returned from work, my husband was sitting in a chair with a somber face. What's with that serious look? Peter, what's wrong? When I asked, my husband knelt down and started crying. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I've been fired from my job. What? But why? The company was involved in some wrongdoing, and it came to light. Because of that, profits fell, and they decided to downsize. And since my sales performance wasn't very good, I was also targeted. So, it's a layoff. I can't blame my husband for this. It can't be helped. We'll just have to find another place. But our income will decrease. Who knows when we'll be able to buy a home if we keep paying rent for the apartment. Yeah, that's true. But we have no choice but to try and cut back, right? Peter is right. From now on, my income will be the only reliable source. While I was wondering what to do, my husband suggested that we could live at his parents' house. Hey, you might not like this, but how about we ask my mom if we can live at my parents' house for a while? That way, we can save on rent. Indeed, that would save on rent and maybe even allow us to save a little bit of money. I guess it's a case of necessity. Honestly, I didn't want to live with my mother-in-law, but after discussing it with my husband, we decided to move to his parents' house. 1 week later, we moved out of our apartment and headed to my in-laws' house. Good to see you. Welcome. Thank you. We'll be in your care for a while. I met my mother-in-law after a long time and felt scared even though she hadn't done anything. Seeing me like that, my mother-in-law smirked. You're staying in this house, so you understand, right? Sorry. What do you mean? Well, it's obvious. You'll be doing the cleaning, laundry, and shopping, right? Of course. It's only natural. You'll do at least that much, right? Now, you can use any room you like, but please start with cleaning the living room. With that, my mother-in-law left for her room. Well, if I'm staying here, I'll do what I can. I almost let out my inner thoughts, but I managed to hold back. I work too, and surely my mother-in-law must understand that. I thought that would be enough, but I was naive. The very next day, the severe harassment from my mother-in-law began. Aren't you coming back from work too late? Look, the laundry is piling up, and please clean the bathroom today. Also, hurry up and make dinner. I'm so hungry I could die. If she's going to say that much, it wouldn't hurt her to do some of it herself. But I don't have the courage to say such things to my mother-in-law. It would be troublesome if I upset her and she kicked me out. I'm sorry. I'll do it right away. Maybe it was wrong to obediently follow her at that moment. From that day on, the harassment from my mother-in-law escalated day by day. Bring me some tea. I'm tired. Give me a massage. Every day after work, I was overworked by my mother-in-law and I had no time to rest. I wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. I wished for that, but it seemed my husband hadn't found a job yet, so we couldn't leave his parents' house yet. Mother-in-law, I'm sorry, but I come home late because of work. If possible, could you help with the household chores during the day? Huh? Why do I have to do it? If you're going to say such things, you might as well quit your job. She told me to quit my job. It's not so easy to just be told that. That night, before going to bed, I told my husband what his mother had said. Today, your mother told me if I can't manage the housework, I should quit my job. Could you maybe ask her to help a little with the chores? It's hard to say, but isn't it okay if you just quit your job? What are you saying? You haven't found a job yet, and if I quit, we really couldn't live, could we? It'll be okay. We'll make it somehow. My husband said it would be okay as if it was someone else's problem. But there was no sign that he was actually looking for a job. Even if I come home early, he's just lounging on the sofa, and on weekends, he's just drinking beer from morning. From that time, I started to think that I couldn't rely on my husband. Of course, he hasn't told his mother anything. 3 months have passed since then, and the harassment from my mother-in-law continued as usual. At that rate, my mind and body would really break. With that thought, I decided to forcefully buy a new house. When I told my husband about buying a new house, he replied indifferently, That's fine, isn't it?" I immediately took my husband to a real estate agent. If we were to build a new house from scratch, we would have to live with my mother-in-law for at least another 6 months. I couldn't wait that long. I chose a newly built home and signed the contract that day. Finally, I would be free from my mother-in-law's harassment. But my plans crumbled easily. 2 weeks later, it was the first weekend since we moved into the new house. It's been hectic with work and moving in, so I thought I might organize some boxes today. Just as I was thinking this, the doorbell rang. Who could it be since we've just moved in? Wondering who it could be, I checked the monitor of the intercom. What? Why? The monitor showed my mother-in-law. I hadn't given her the address. How did she know where we live? Feeling a sense of dread, I spoke to her through the intercom. Mother-in-law, it's been a while. What a nice house. I've come for a visit. Hurry up and open the door, will you? It's quite messy right now. If you're here to visit, maybe another time would be better. Just open it quickly. Hearing my mother-in-law shout, I inadvertently obeyed her. It reminded me of the times when I was dominated by her at my in-laws' house. When I opened the front door, my mother-in-law ignored me and marched straight into the house. The smell of a new house. It's nice, isn't it? What brings you here today? My mother-in-law ignored my question and began walking around the new house, inspecting every corner as if appraising it. After a while, she started to say, "Which room is yours?" It's the room right up the stairs. You have quite good taste, don't you? I thought that room was nice too. What would that mean? I couldn't understand the meaning behind my mother-in-law's words ever since she arrived. Mother-in-law, I'll ask again. What is the reason for your visit today? It's obvious, isn't it? I came to check on it because I'm moving in here. What? An involuntary, pathetic sound escaped me. Living here? I haven't heard anything about that. I've decided I will live in your room. It's wasted on an ugly maid of a wife like you. No, wait a minute. That's so sudden. What? Do you have a complaint? Then, I guess you have no choice but to use the attic. That should settle it, right? No, that was not what I meant. After all, I bought this house. However, my mother-in-law didn't know this and seemed to believe her son bought it. Peter earned the money to buy this house, didn't he? Then, it's only natural that I live here, isn't it? Besides, your mother-in-law is asking you to give up the room. Isn't it just common sense for you, the daughter-in-law, to obediently hand it over? Like hell, that's common sense. The one lacking common sense is her. It's unthinkable to just show up and start living together. The arguments with my mother-in-law continued, but she showed no signs of giving up. Gradually, I grew exhausted and it became a nuisance to even deal with her. If you're okay with the attic, then say so. Hurry up and give me this house. Stupid, ugly wife. Her words finally broke my patience. Enough with the ugly and maid talk. If that's how it's going to be, I understand. I understand. Then, mother-in-law, please live in this house. I will be leaving. You should have just obeyed me from the start, lol. Well, I'll be living in this house now, lol. My mother-in-law was overjoyed to hear that I was leaving. She could be happy for a while, but let me make it clear, I have never once said I would give up the house. The ownership of this house is mine. I will never forgive you, who have relentlessly tormented me as your daughter-in-law. At that moment, I swore to get my revenge on my mother-in-law. I decided to leave the newly built house that very day. I had just bought and moved into a new home, and I never expected to end up in such a situation. Hey, Faith, what are you doing? You're packing up. I'm leaving this house. While I was packing up my room, Peter came in and spoke to me. Seeing his carefree expression made me even more furious. After all, it's because he didn't seriously look for a job that I had to endure being overworked by my mother-in-law at her house for so long. What? You're leaving? What's going on all of a sudden? We just bought the house. I'm fed up with both you and your mother. Your mother treats me like a maid, and that's why I forcibly bought this house. But then she comes over saying nonsensical things like I should live in the attic. That should be fine, right? We're family. Hearing my husband's words made something snap inside me. It should be fine because we're family? Don't be ridiculous. For the first time, I raised my voice in anger at my husband. Don't mess with me. I felt sorry for you when you were laid off. But how long are you planning to keep being a NEET? You don't even seem to be looking for a job, and all you do is laze around every day. If you had so much free time, you could have taken care of your mother instead of me. I can't take this anymore. I'm going to divorce you. Divorce. Wait, please. I really was looking for a job. Then why has it taken so long? Working full-time isn't the only kind of job. I could have tolerated it if you at least tried to find a part-time job, but you didn't even do that. The conditions were bad. The pay was low. Making excuses to not work is just being spoiled. If he really felt sorry about having no income, he could at least get a part-time job. In the end, it seems like he only thought of me as nothing more than an ATM. I expected him to say something back, but he remained silent. So your silence means you agree with the divorce, right? Oh, okay. If you want to get divorced that much, let's get a divorce. What a pathetic man. If he had any pride, he'd rush out right now and look for any job, even a part-time one. Well, it's pointless to say anything more now. I had always kept a divorce form just in case, and I handed it to my husband then. Here, sign here right now. I'll leave once I get your signature. His hands seemed to tremble as he signed the divorce form with shaky handwriting. There, I've signed it. I received the divorce form from my husband and checked that he had signed it properly. Good. You've signed it properly. I'll file this at the courthouse. Also, I won't ask for alimony. I don't ever want to deal with you again in my life. With those words, I left the new house. I went straight to the courthouse and submitted the divorce form. Now I am a complete stranger to both my husband and my mother-in-law. Now that we are no longer related by family, I won't show any mercy to those two. I'll make sure they thoroughly fall into hell. After leaving the city hall, I headed to the real estate agency. Entering the office, I immediately said to the clerk, I want to sell my house. The clerk, surprised by my sudden approach, attended to me. Do you have the registry book? Yes, here it is. I'll take a look. As the clerk opened the registry book, he froze. What's wrong? Is there a reason it can't be sold? What's the matter? Well, forgive me for saying this, but you've just bought this house recently, right? It hasn't even been half a year since it was built. Yes, I no longer need it. I don't need a house where those people live. Rather than having it misused, I'd rather someone else live in it. When I explained this to the clerk, he seemed to understand my situation and immediately began a process for selling. With this, the contract is complete. We'll contact you once we find a buyer. Understood. Thank you very much. After leaving the real estate office, I decided to go back to my parents' house. My parents were quite surprised by my sudden return, but when I explained the situation and told them about the divorce, they were even more upset than I was. They've hurt you so much. I'll never forgive them. I'll make them pay. Stop it, Dad. Besides, I don't want to be involved with them anymore, so can you just stay calm? It was hard to calm my father down, but he eventually regained his composure. For the time being, I decided to stay at my parents' house. 2 weeks later. By now, those two probably don't even know I've sold the house and are carelessly enjoying their days. While I was drinking coffee in the living room and thinking, the phone rang. Here it comes. Hello. Has it been decided? Yes, we've found a buyer. However, the buyer doesn't like the fence and has requested that it be demolished before they move in. Oh, is that all? They could have done that without asking me. That's totally fine. They can do whatever they like. Besides, I no longer have any right to object. Well, your ex-husband and his mother are still living there. That's fine. Originally, when the house was sold, they were supposed to move out. But thanks to the kindness of the clerk, they were allowed to stay until a buyer was found, right? How about this? Please let me know the day of the demolition. I'll be there to oversee it. I was told that the demolition of the fence at the house would take place next Saturday. After hanging up the phone, I couldn't stop laughing. I could picture those two panicking. The time for revenge has finally come. I eagerly awaited that day. And then the day of the demolition arrived. The demolition of the fence was scheduled to start at 8 a.m. I was so excited that I couldn't sleep much the previous night, and I arrived an hour before the construction was to start. I couldn't wait for it to begin. When I checked the time, it was 7:50 a.m. One by one, the workers gathered, and I could see the real estate agent among them. He seemed to have noticed me and approached with a smile. Thank you for coming out here today. No problem. I've been looking forward to this. Looking forward to it? Never mind that. It's just something on my side. Don't worry. By the way, are you sure we shouldn't inform the two people inside about the demolition? That's fine. It actually works out better this way. Please, go ahead and start. I called out to the workers as if I were a site supervisor. Perhaps moved by that, the workers began to activate the heavy machinery and started demolishing the fence. What? What is going on? What are you doing? Stop it right now. Predictably, the noise was too much. My mother-in-law came rushing out of the house in a panic. My ex-husband was right behind her. Oh, mother-in-law, long time no see. Have you been well? Faith, you. Stop them right now. What? Sorry, what did you say? It's a bit noisy around here. I can hardly hear you. Of course, I could hear my mother-in-law's voice. I asked her again deliberately, and she turned red with anger. I get it. This is your doing. You think you're getting back at me for kicking you out, doing something so selfish. I'll call the police. She's welcome to call the police if she wants. But then, the only ones getting arrested would be them. I told my mother-in-law confidently, if you call the police, aren't you the ones who will get arrested? What? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. As we argued, the demolition continued smoothly. It seemed they had managed to demolish the fence roughly. Noticing this, my mother-in-law became even more enraged. My house. I will never forgive you. I think I've had enough now. I was getting tired of my mother-in-law's reactions. I decided it was time to tell her the real truth. Well, there's a reason things ended up this way. It's noisy outside with the demolition. Shall we talk inside the house? Reluctantly, my mother-in-law invited me inside. So, what's the reason? Don't make excuses, or I really will call the police. That's what I've been saying. You can call them if you want. It's you who will get arrested. Let's put that aside for now. Can you explain why this is happening? My ex-husband stepped in. Fine, I'll explain slowly. Listen, this house was originally bought by me. What? What are you saying? Peter bought it, right? No, what Faith is saying is correct. I didn't buy it. What? Wait a minute. So, that means, yes, I bought this house. So, mother-in-law, you understand now, right? Who owns this house? You mean, you? It seemed that my mother-in-law finally understood the truth. Correct. I no longer own it, though. Do you understand what that means? This house has already been sold. No, that can't be. This feels good. To hear such a pathetic voice from my mother-in-law, who tormented me so much. But there was no need to go this far. No, you're one to talk. I almost retorted. Struggling to hold back laughter, I glared at my mother-in-law and delivered a sarcastic remark. How does it feel to be retaliated against by the ugly maid of a daughter-in-law you've been exploiting all this time? I feel fantastic. Now, you can't live in this house anymore. Too bad. That's why I told you. If you call the police, you're the ones who will get arrested. It would be trespassing. Hey, you didn't have to go that far. Still taking your mother's side at this point? You really are incredibly stupid. Rather than that, you better start looking for a place to live quickly. You'll be forced to leave in less than a month due to the cleaning of the interiors. It seems neither my ex-husband nor my mother-in-law had the energy left to retort. I left the house with a clear expression, leaving the two behind. Wow, it's pretty cleaned up here. Yes, I think we'll call it a day with this much for today. By the way, what were you discussing inside? I was just telling those two to pack up their things and leave quickly. Now that a buyer has been found, we can't afford any trouble. If they refuse to leave, feel free to call the police without any hesitation. Well then, I'll be off. I said goodbye to the clerk and returned to my parents' house. The expressions on those two's faces were truly priceless, especially the look of despair on my mother-in-law's face. Selling the house was worth it just for that. Serve you right. While soaking in the bath at my parents' house, I raised my clenched fist triumphantly towards the sky. 2 weeks later, a message from my ex-husband arrived on my cell phone. It's been a while. I moved into a cheap apartment right after that, so you don't have to worry about that house anymore. Also, I've started to reflect and got a job at an auto factory as a contract worker. I regret not taking action sooner. Regretting won't bring you back. Since you left, Mom has started to take it out on me, and I've realized how tough it was. I now understand the struggles you went through. Take care. As they say, it's no use crying over spilt milk. He finally understands something that can't be helped now. Those fools, mother and son, might as well enjoy living together. I deleted the message without replying and blocked my ex-husband's contact. I don't want any more disturbances from him going forward. For a while, I plan to enjoy being single, living stress-free, and doing what I love.